Our special coverage now of the intensifying drought crisis. Our reporter Andrew Crothers is travelling through hard-hit parts of southwest Queensland.
Yeah, this morning, Andrea joins us from the town of Dirranbandi, where small business leaders fear a mass exodus if the government doesn't ramp up drought support. Andrea, how are things looking on the ground there?
Well, Pete, I said before that even the kangaroos seem to be struggling here. Now, this is typically an area that is plagued by them. Now, you do know how bad it is when you actually start to see what roos are left, start to try and move into town to try and find grass. Now, as for ground coverage or grass coverage outside, there's barely any. Locals here say that they'd be lucky for a bushfire to burn because there simply isn't any fuel there. Now, what we do know is that when the farms are doing it tough, there is no money to be spent in towns, meaning that communities like Dirranbandi, St George are struggling now. One prominent car dealership for this entire region, he says that his sales dropped 75% in the first 3 years of the drought. Now that we're going into 7 years, you can just imagine how he's struggling.
Well, after 2 years of drought, all the bad businesses closed up. But what it did mean is left all the strong businesses in town. So it's been a fight to the death, and we're just fighting as hard as we can. And now it's getting a bit long, and even those strong businesses are really, really struggling.
Short of making it rain, Andrea, what do these farmers want the government to do?
Well, whilst there has obviously been some support for those on farm in the terms of the farm household allowance, although there's obviously been a lot of complexities and challenges around that, some of the local businesses saying that they would like an economic stimulus in the form of wage subsidies to help those who are in businesses try and retain staff, although they do concede that would be extremely costly and challenging. Now, with regards to Christmas, they say that this is the tipping point. It's a real general feeling we are getting around these parts, Laura and Pete. They say that if it doesn't rain in that time, well, they don't have any other sort of form of economic stimulus. They fear that some businesses will be forced to either close up or sell up.
We hear horror stories of people around the district that are at the end of their negotiations with their bank, and their banks are really not allowing them to restructure any further. So I think if we don't get rain by Christmas, we're going to see a mass exodus from our business district, which would be devastating.
Now, obviously, the major concern with that is if businesses do leave, when it comes to towns like this, they generally don't have a large duplication of businesses, meaning that services for those farmers out here would actually be far more difficult to get. They'd have to travel much further, and they fear that rural communities like Dirranbandi wouldn't recover, Laura.